Hi, everyone. And yes, and as I say, even though excavations are not allowed, there is still a lot to talk about. I also see that we have some new viewers with us, so welcome on board. Unfortunately, I cannot provide the review of the 8 hours, 7 hours of the tour of the Temple Mount. But as the tour goes, I will be pointing out to a few things here. But it's always a good idea to start with this map. Well, the layout of the old city. And as you can see, the four quarters and the Temple Mount stands out. It is controlled, well, it is policed by the IDF, by Israel Defense Force. So Israeli police is there, and the Israeli police can actually enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque if needed, but obviously they don't do that, but they can. However, when it gets to scholarly work and the studies, worshiping and everything, and pilgrimage, it's only controlled by the WAF, the organization that runs all the Muslim sites in the Middle East. Well, in Israel and Jordan is based in Jordan, so it's all up to WAF. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you so much for the tips. So let's get started. Well, since I am non-Muslim, as I've already said, there is only way for me to enter the Temple Mount. That's through the Jewish quarter and through the Maghrabi gate. This is, well, I know I don't have the pointer. For some reason, Zoom still does not provide that. But you see that there is this kind of a wooden tunnel, kind of. So that's exactly how non-Muslims now at this in this current situation, and it's been like this for several dozens of years, and enter so through these gates. And there's also a certain gate that they can leave the Temple Mount through. Well, but we're going to see that next time. And yes, the Temple Mount itself is um, I would say this is the third holiest site for Muslims and the first holiest site for Jews. It's also important for Christians because Jesus was a Jew and he visited Jerusalem multiple times throughout his life. And before his ministry and during his ministry, he taught at the Temple Mount as well. And today we are going to be talking about some of the important events in the life of Jesus that must have, well, that definitely they did happen on the Temple Mount. What I'm going to say now, especially to those who are joining us for the first time, that we have been able to find a great deal of information with regards to what had been there, what is there under in the base of the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. There is they were found the constructions from the temple built by Herod the Great, right? So we know that there were two temples we will be talking about closer to the end of the tour. So the temple that was destroyed by the Romans in year 70 AD, that was the Herod's temple. And the Herod significantly enlarged the Temple Mount. So the way the Temple Mount looks nowadays, this is all the work of Herod in the first century BCE, and they were found under the Al-Aqsa Mosque and under the dome. Well, under the Al-Aqsa Mosque, primarily, they were found a lot of structures, Roman structures, and they completely fit. They completely coincide with the construction features, the different masonry signs from the Roman period, from the first century BCE. So I'm not going to repeat everything that we have covered, but also we were able to identify different structures as we go. And I'm using a lot of the visual aids from the Holy Land site because I don't just have a budget for all these visual aids and the infographics. And obviously for my research and for my tours, I rely a lot on the book of Lindrit Mayer, who is the biggest authority when it gets to the Temple Mount archaeology. Kind of the Schrodinger's archaeology, because you cannot really excavate, but what you see is archaeology. So you have it and you don't have it, but it's the amazing thing that you have without having the archaeology. So, and now let's talk about the Eastern Wall. So for the past several tours, we were trying to find the platform from the Solomon time. So the first temple built by Solomon in around 980 BCE, that's like 3,000 years ago, it was way smaller. And we were able to identify from the three sides, actually from the four sides, but we're going to be talking about the fourth side also now. We were able to find those particular stones and the little bit of the layouts of the original platform. So we also know from the extra biblical, well, from the sources such as the Mishnah, which is the collection of Jewish laws. So the descriptions of the Solomon's temple, and this is where we come across the information about the size of the platform, so 500 royal cubits. And yes, indeed, we have been able to identify the stones and different features and different details in the way the walls are arranged. So what we're looking at now is the eastern wall, and the valley underneath it is the Kidron Valley. And what you see here, though, so that there is a certain bend in the wall, right? So we have to just see what the stones can tell us. If you walk past the Temple Mount from the east, right? Well, you cannot really see that bend in the wall, but you see it from the air. It's really quite inconspicuous. I mean, you can find it, but well, you need to know where to look for it. But yes, there is that it is there. It is there. So that bend in the wall actually marks the edge of the Solomon platform. So because in order to extend the platform, Herod did not destroy what had already been there. And Herod wasn't the only one who wanted to and who did try and extended the platform. There were also other periods. So, but you see this graphic work from Lindbergh Meyer, the bend in the wall. You can see it closer to the right side of the screen. And you can see also the different stones, Hasmonean masonry, Herodian masonry. So the stones on the surface of the Temple Mount, on the wall of the Temple Mount, the eastern wall, they can tell the story. The way they look, the way the different markers from the masons of different times, they can tell an amazing story. And that's what we're trying to do together with you. And starting from that bend in the wall starts the Hasmonean sort of the extension, which took place in the 2nd century BCE. And the recent Hanukkah celebration is actually related to that period exactly. I'm not going into details, but it just happens so that these tours are really timely because we happen to be celebrating many things that happened on the Temple Mount. Yeah, around this time. So right now I am walking. This is my video from several months ago, and I did show you this video when we did the tour around the walls of the old city. That also took us about 7 episodes. I know I know I've been very generous with the information because I want to be as detailed as possible because, well, it's such a rare opportunity to have this much time devoted to all these topics. And now we are actually passing by that bend in the wall, but we don't see that also because of the growth, because of the Muslim cemetery. And you don't see that bend in the wall, but you see the seams of the later periods of the Hasmonean period and the Herodian period. So the 2nd century BCE and the 1st century BCE. And you see the difference in the masonry. You see that, and you see the seams. So thank you so much, Lindbergh Meyer, for providing this to us, because, I mean, how else can we, well, he was able to find all those marks. This is incredible. No excavations needed. You just need to know how to look at things and carry out this comparative study. And also the way the seams look. That clearly looked like an edge of the platform at some point before other stones were placed next to it for the extension. So it goes without saying that what we're looking at, that next to the seams, yes, we did actually see the border lines of the other expansion. So the let's say the orange is Solomon platform, the yellow is the Hasmonean expansion, and what starts from the Hasmonean expansion is the Herodian expansion. As you know, Herod extended the Temple Mount from the 3 sides but didn't touch the eastern side because there was no, well, at that point, there had not been Muslim cemetery because Islam hadn't even been born at that point. There would be 7 more centuries to go, basically. But there was the Kidron Valley, and there was nowhere to extend. That was it. So the free size was already quite a difficult, a really challenging task because of the terrain. As you see, it's uneven, and also because of these changes in the terrain, you see that now we're kind of going downhill. And by the way, if we cross the road and we look downhill, we will see the city of David. Mary, thank you so much for the coffees. Now, well, I'm showing you this because we're going to need to understand that for how the Temple Mount was extended. Just we need to take into account always the terrain, always the the area itself, how flat or how steep that is. And Jerusalem, oh, that's a tricky area because there are always in mountains and going up and down the hill. That's always a big challenge. So we started basically at the corner of the southwestern wall. As we entered the Temple Mount, we entered from the western wall. That's where we were. We went all around it, past the Dome of the Rock to the opposite edge. Then we walked from the northern side to the northeastern side. And then we wrapped up where actually the last tour, the previous tour, we ended up exactly somewhere near the bend in the wall. And I'm not going to repeat what we have what we have already spoken about, but there's one thing that I need to point out because, well, that's important to be nitty gritty about these things. As I said, 500 cubits, royal cubits from each side. However, there is a little discrepancy in exactly this southern wall of the old city, of the Temple Mount. Why so? So it's 495 royal cubits. It's really a nuisance. It's not really much, but to be consistent, we need to talk about it. So you saw how the road goes down the hill, and the elevation is, well, the change in elevation is pretty significant. So because of that, we assume that Herod could not really provide that even Solomon was not able to, the Solomon Masons were not able to provide the exact same size of the platform just due to the terrain. But this is quite negligible, and we can really neglect this 5 royal cubits. So now we are on the Temple Mount. We have already spoken about the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We have spoken about the constructions, the arches that were found underground, where they were exposed during the constructions after the reconstruction works after the earthquake that took place in 1920s. So, and the area where we are walking now we're going to be studying it. Right, so today we're focusing on the corner of the eastern side of the Temple Mount wall and the southern side of the Temple Mount wall. And this is already the Hasmonean expansion and the Herodian expansion that we are walking on. So somewhere here the edge is. You don't see the edge here on the surface, but you can see it if you look at the seams from the outside of the eastern wall. So that's what we need to understand. And also you can see different smaller constructions on top. This is the ventilation, because as we already know, there is a big underground mosque exactly in that area, and that ventilation is absolutely essential. But we cannot enter it, and we spoke about the issues connected with that excavation, so we are not going to discuss that. What we need to discuss is what had been there before, what had been there in the Herodian times. That's what's important. And speaking of the stone, so the Western Wall, right? Let me get back here for a second. So that's the Western Wall I'm talking about. That's to the side from where we enter. So that Western Wall is, well, Western Wall, this is the Western Wall Praying Plaza. This is the biggest open air synagogue. So yes, for sure. But originally the wall had no meaning. It was just the wall. Since the temple was destroyed, it was just the wall that the Jews had. And the amazing thing is that the Herodian stones were still there and exactly at the level of the well, that the humans approach. Yeah, so we see the Herodian stones, so the stones from the temple period. All the subsequent stones of the further periods, they don't have any spiritual meaning, obviously, for the Jews, but the Herodian stones are there. How do we know they are Herodians? They have a clear-cut shape. They have the edges. They have the special masonry marks on them, consistent with the first century BCE Roman architecture. So here it's absolutely goes without saying this is Herodian period. Now, so we're back. Again, we're going to go like back and forth here and there in order to understand what's going on, to put like two and two together. And as I said, it's important to understand, okay, so, okay, we see the Herodian stones. They're still there. It goes without saying. Those are the Herodian stones. But what was on the surface of the Temple Mount during the Herodian times? There are a lot of descriptions of what actually was going on. So Herod did the unimaginable. He built the big platform and he turned the Temple Mount into a kind of a city within the city. It wasn't just the temple. There were a lot of different areas. There were several courts. There were different areas depending on well, whether it was women or men, whether those were Jews or the Gentiles. There were different areas also convenient and comfortable to be in. There were a lot of roof terraces to protect you from the heat, to protect you from the wind. And also, Herod knew that for the pilgrimage festivals, at least 3 times a year, there would be thousands and thousands of Jews coming to the Temple Mount. So exactly in that area, which is the southeastern part, well, actually the eastern part of the Temple Mount, was the so-called Solomon portico. Well, this is just well, the model of what the portico could have looked like. And we have also a better model of the Solomon portico that just went all along the eastern wall, right? So you see that there is a portico, there is a little bit of a terraced gallery, and that's also because of the Solomon's portico. Well, when the Crusaders discovered the arched spaces in the Temple Mount, they believed that those were actually Solomon's tables, and that's how they named it. Yeah, well, this is the eastern side of the Temple Mount, the Solomon portico. And when it gets to the southern side of the Temple Mount, as you may have noticed, there it looks a little different. So this is the area where the Solomon portico used to be, right? And it would go to the left. But here, to the in the right-hand side of the southern wall, there was a bigger gallery, also roof gallery, called the Royal Stoa. It was royal because it was huge. It had rows of columns, and it is, well, there is, I would say, the 95% of the scholarly community believes that that area of the Temple Mount happened to be the place where the Pentecost took place. So let's go back to the book of Acts, the second book of Acts. I'm just providing here some quotes from the book, but and I know many of you must be even better familiar with it even than I am, but nevertheless. So when the day of Pentecost had fully come, so Pentecost means actually the 50th day, right? So when the day of Pentecost had fully come, they were all together in one place. And suddenly they came from heaven a sound like a rushing mighty wind, and filled the whole house where they were sitting. And they appeared to them tongues as of fire, distributing themselves, and one sat upon each of them. And they were all filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in tongues, right, in other tongues, as the Spirit gave them utterance. So basically, the Pentecost is the birth of the Christian church, right? And how it started spreading the word, right? The world. So Peter, so that happened during his teaching, said to them, repent and be baptized, every one of you, in the name of Jesus Christ for the forgiveness of your sins, and you will receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. For the promise is for you and for your children and for all who are far off. I remind you that this story is not about proselytizing. It's just we're just using the descriptions from the biblical sources to see if it fits the archaeology and the architecture. So those who received his word were baptized, and they were added to that about 3,000 souls. Okay, so on the 50th day after the Pesach, right? So that's we're talking here still not about Easter. We're talking about the Passover. We're talking about the Pesach, right? So the 50th day after Jesus resurrected. So 3,000 people. Okay, so as you may be familiar with other places that are considered to be the place of the Pentecost, there is a place called the Upper Room, and we visited together with you. This is also the place that is believed to be the place of the Last Supper, right? The Upper Room is on the Mount Zion, outside of the old city wall of the old city walls, just right next to the old city walls, next to the Dormition Abbey. Yeah, but that room could never, well, there's no way it could house 3,000 people. We know that the Holy Scriptures, the Testaments, both New and Old, they are not history books exactly. Yeah, and things there tend to be exaggerated or omitted. Yeah, however, there's a lot of things that we have discovered, that have been discovered, and we have spoken about that actually quite fit the descriptions. So it's not just a fiction book, it's kind of something in the middle. Okay, 3,000 people. No, definitely this couldn't be the upper room. Could it be the Temple Mount? Most likely. But it said a house, right? So uh, if you go, let's say, and see what it says in Hebrew, let's say, or in other languages. So yes, it was translated from the word bite, right? So the word home. But the thing is that home, be it Hebrew, be it Aramaic, and Aramaic was the spoken language during times of Jesus. Jesus spoke Aramaic. Hebrew was the language of the scripture, right? So the bite, the word home or house, has many meanings. And it didn't really have to be a a certain home or a room in a house. It could be just any space that could be called a bite. Even the temple is called the house, habayit, right? In Hebrew, even nowadays, when you say the Temple Mount, well, in Hebrew, it sounds like har habayit. So the mount of the Temple Mount, that's exactly what it says. So you don't really need, well, and also the translations can be a little corrupt, right? There's always this risk of the wrong translations, just the misinterpretation. It's not about them making mistakes deliberately when translating. There were some significant mistakes that were made during the translation, from Greek into other languages. Yes, this is true in Latin. Yeah, this is true. Many of them are known to us. I'm not going into that now. However, it's very interesting, especially for me being a linguist. But so still, you don't have to take it just as it is. And this place, to just gigantic royal store, actually of 2 floors, it could fit many people. I'm not sure about the thousands, right? But it didn't have to be just a I would say completely at one and the same time. There had to be 3,000 people. But we know that during the pilgrimage festivals and um, Shavuot is exactly celebrated after 49 days, right? So on the 49th day, it exactly means 7 weeks. 7 weeks of 7 days, right? 7 multiplied by 7, 49. So Shavuot is one of those pilgrimage festivals for which thousands and thousands of Jews will be coming to the temple from all over the world, not just Jerusalem and its environs. So it's possible, it is definitely possible that thousands of people could have been there when Peter taught and when the Pentecost and the Holy Spirit came upon them and they started speaking in tongues. So this is the most plausible area for the Pentecost. But then you can ask me, okay, well, where is the royal stoa now, and how on earth would people enter the royal stoa, and how on earth could the people enter, thousands of people enter the Temple Mount? Well, many months ago, we did a tour outside of the southern walls of the Temple Mount, and we saw the area, the so-called Ophel. We also saw the excavations next to it. So let's come closer to to this to the window, to the slit in the window. You can see also the stones of different colors because the stones are from the different periods here. And if you look down and down, you see the road. But here, this is the actually the excavations of the southern wall of the Temple Mount, and the mix of different areas, including the area called Ophel. And it goes actually next to the road that we saw as we turned at the edge of the of the eastern and southern wall. So that area had several entrances, and there were many gates all around the Temple Mount to ensure the smooth access and exit from the Temple Mount for for that many people. Actually, Herod did. Uh, he realized that the number of people grew, and the small Temple Mount, well, the smaller Temple Mount just could not really feed all the people that wanted to see it and visit it on the pilgrimage festival. So he managed to do it. He managed to pull it through almost smoothlessly, I would say. Sorry, almost seamlessly, really smoothly, because all the worship, the sacrifice, the services were held while the construction was going on. So that was quite impressive. So the Ophel, just in case, so you see the area called Ophel. So that's exactly what we saw as we looked through that window slit. And if you go down from the Ophel, like across the road that we see nowadays, right, that we've seen, you will see the city of David. Speaking of the arches, right, I told you that Herod, well, Herod had to come up with very creative solutions. Well, his engineers had to come up with creative solutions in order to fit the big platform of the Temple Mount, the new extended platform. And the terrain, as I said, was extremely challenging. So the area where we are now walking, actually underneath us is air. And right now in that very area is the mosque, right? That we spoke about it in one of the previous tours. And that's exactly those arches that were partly the arches that were exposed during the reconstruction works of the Al-Aqsa Mosque after the earthquake a century ago. And you see that it goes down the hill. So the arches in the southern side, exactly under the area of Pentecost, Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the Royal Stoa. Well, the Pentecost, I mean, the Royal Stoa, that's where the Pentecost happened. So those are all arches all the way. Because there, the bedrock goes down. Now that we have discussed the most plausible area for the Pentecost, let's see something else. So what we can see there now is already the Mount of Olives. We have visited the Mount of Olives for a number of places associated with the Jesus ministry and the visits of Jesus to the temple for the pilgrimage festival. So ahead of us is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And also you may have noticed a lot of columns, well, capitales of the columns just lying there, unassumingly here and there. Well, these are the different architectural elements found on the territory from different periods. And since stone is very difficult to date, you can't really apply a carbon-14 dating test to non-organic materials, so you can't really date stones. And also the issue is that the secondary use makes things even more complicated because stones would be used and reused multiple times. And in most cases, there is no way to say which period the stone originally comes from. Before each mosque or synagogue, there always has to be a purification fountain. Well, purification is a very important notion first coming from Judaism. Judaism is the oldest of the Abrahamic religion, so we start from there. So the purification was absolutely essential before visiting the temple, and kind of the purification thing for baptism also came to Christianity. We don't need to, well, the Christians don't need to purify themselves before visiting the church anymore, but the baptism is that kind of the fundamental thing that symbolizes the purification for life in Christianity. And in Islam, since Islam being the youngest of the three monotheistic religions, and I would say it's not based, well, in a way it is based on Judaism and Christianity, but it's obviously way more than that, definitely. But yes, the purification thing is important, and this is the purification fountain. One of the words that you can use for it is debil. There are also other words that you can use with regards to the purification fountains. This one is not operating, however, well, it is operating on the bigger festivals, such as Eid al-Fitr and others. By the way, last year Eid al-Fitr coincided with the celebration of Hanukkah and Christmas, but since the Muslims follow a different calendar, well, this year Eid al-Fitr happens a little later in spring. So, but this is a big festival also held on the Temple Mount. So, and on these days, this fountain should be working. And in Islam, it has to be, you need to purify your hands and you need to purify also your legs before the prayer, before visiting the mosque. So there's always a source of water next to these buildings. I also have been able to find, and I have shared with you quite a great number of photographs and illustrations of different periods of the Temple Mount. Well, in this photo, you don't really see the fountain here, but we believe that that fountain, well, that particular fountain was created in the 19th century, but we believe that there had been fountain there starting from somewhat 15th century at least. However, there's no really evidence to that. This is clearly something more modern and developed also in the 20th century. And now we need to, well, we'll be going past this fountain. And well, one of the names of it is the fountain of a cup, because the fountain looks like a cup. It was a smaller one here from the 15th century. Then in the 19th century, a bigger fountain was built because the number of pilgrims was growing. In the 19th century, second half of the 19th century, the pilgrims of the three religions basically invaded the city. And speaking of purification, I also need to mention the red heifer. That's red, absolutely red, without a single spot cow, which was used in a very important purification ritual. So sacrifice is something that was practiced when the temple was there. Let's resort to the book of Numbers, the command of the red heifer. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded. Tell the people of Israel to bring you a red heifer without defect, in which there is no blemish, and on which a yoke has never come. And you shall give it to Eleazar the priest, and it shall be taken outside the camp and slaughtered before him." Yes, basically this you know yeah, slaughter, this practice of slaughtering, sacrifice, um it is largely connected with the binding of Isaac. So that basically represents and symbolizes the how subservient to the will of God the people of Israel were, and the binding of Isaac, the readiness of his father to sacrifice his own son, because Lord asked to. That, as you know, angel stopped, right, Abraham from doing so, and instead, right, the animal sacrifice started to be practiced. But the red heifer thing, it's a very special purification ritual, and we are moving further on here. So burning and sprinkling of the sprinkling of blood. I'm speaking about it because just to show you how different rituals are actually connected, and how they it also took, and how it was arranged, and how it took place on the Temple Mount. So that was taken actually outside of the house. Again, it says Habait, right? So it's still a question where the red heifer ritual could have taken place, that it was clearly somewhere not far from the area of the temple. So and the heifer shall be burned on its side after it's slaughtered in a certain way. Its skin, its flesh, and its blood with its dung shall be burned. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and the scarlet yarn, and throw them into the fire, burning the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes and bathe his body in the water, and afterward he may come into the camp, but the priest shall be unclean until evening. Well, there's an interesting thing. Well, the purity and the impurity in Judaism. So since, well, I just wanted to make sure you see where I am before we go up. So before we go up, you see the steps. In fact, if you are on the Temple Mount, you happen to be there not alone. I just happened to be at around 7 a.m. when it just opened for visitors, and there was nobody there. I was hoping to see at least someone that was kind of stopped by the steps. The issue of purity is also important because, well, okay, there is no temple there anymore, but there was a temple. And many rabbis nowadays, and ever since the destruction of the temple in year 70 AD, so like 2000 years ago, they claim that because of the purity issues and the impurity issues, the descendants of Cohen, the Cohens, the Kohanim, cannot enter. It is strictly recommended not to enter the Dome of the Rock, because this is the area where the Dome of the Rock, right? It's built on top of the rock that actually happens to be the area where the Holy of Holies, where nobody but the Cohens could access like once a year, and all the other chambers next to it where only the Cohens, the priests, could enter. So that's why the Cohens, many Cohens, do not actually go to the Dome of the Rock, because right now it's impossible to say where which area was. Well, there is certain understanding of where it must have been, but you cannot really see it accurately. So that's why a lot of observant Orthodox Jews, they do not go there because of these impurity issues. And the biggest impurity thing for Jews can be actually the dead body. And what if those Cohens were in contact with the dead flesh? That would have been the biggest of the sins, absolutely outrageous to enter the dome. Well, not the Dome of the Rock, but the area of where the Hole of the Holies used to be, right? And the red heifer thing was that particular ritual that the priest had to go through in order to completely be immune to that contact with the dead flesh and everything. So that was a very important purification ritual. But since now sacrifice is not really held, but the purification does. But because of the dead, because of the contact with possible contact with the dead flesh, well, and also the other impurity issues, this is strictly forbidden. Well, strictly not recommended for the Kohens to enter the area of the Dome of the Rock. But as you know, I'm not Jewish, so I'm not scared of this thing. So I can go. I wish I could visit the Dome of the Rock. Up until like year 2000, we actually could. I mean, but I was too young to do that. So let's talk about the Dome of the Rock, and this will be a nice recap for those who haven't seen the previous episodes. I hope you're still here. I know I'm being a bit nerdy at times, and I also try not to be that nerdy, but sometimes I have to. So, what is actually the Dome of the Rock? So, originally, it's standing on that very rock where, so on the Mount Moriah, right where the binding of Isaac took place. On that place, later on in the year 980 BCE, Solomon built the first temple. Then, yeah, so, and the original platform from the Solomon temple was exactly 500 royal cubits per 500 royal cubits. You can have that idea. We have a certain understanding where the other areas, where the other constructions used to be, and where the Holy of Holies was. So the Holy of Holies was exactly with the Ark of the Covenant that was exactly on the rock, which was basically the bedrock of the Mount Moriah. That's basically that. We'll also have the photos. Don't worry, even if we cannot enter, there are photographs, which is, well, not ideal, but it's better than nothing. So then, as you know, in 586 BCE, the temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, Jews taken to Babylonian exile, right, on the rivers of Babylon, right? So that's the song. That's exactly what this is about. Then 50 years later, Jews are allowed to return. And then by 515 BCE, Zerubbabel rebuilds the temple. Nehemiah starts rebuilding the walls of the destroyed city. And this is, well, when the much smaller, a lot more modest temple would be standing up until Herod came in and decided to not just to rebuild, enlarge the temple, but also, well, but to extend the Temple Mount. However, that's also important to understand that Herod didn't change the dimensions. So the dimensions given by God about how the temple had to look and what had to be there, what the size had to be, all this is documented. I mean, this is all written, and we have the sources for it, right? But so the dimensions were not changed. That remained unchanged, but the area all around the Holy of Holies and the temple, yes, for sure, that was free to changes. Yeah, oh, yes, sorry, just give me a second. Sorry. So, and you see on this particular illustration, so the circle of the yellow color, that's the first temple, right, by Solomon. And you see that in the heart of it is called Sachra. So Sachra is that stone. So that part of the bedrock, that particular stone where the binding of Isaac took place. So in Judaism, it is believed to be the source of everything, the hub of everything, where everything started, the starting point. And that's what the Dome of the Rock is now standing above. That's what the temple area looked right at times of Herod. There were multiple entrances, multiple exits for Jews, for the poor, for the rich, like the VIP entrances, for the priests. And a lot of this archaeology is already exposed in the southern wall, also at the corner of the western and southern wall. And there is a place, and there is a museum called the Western Wall Tunnels, which we also have already done tours in. And we saw that archaeology, even if you cannot dig on the Temple Mount, you can dig right outside of the Temple Mount. And they found a lot of things, and we talked about it. So, as you know, the recordings of my tours can be accessed through the membership option, and I provide the links on the chat. And here you can see from the right-hand side this royal stoa. It was huge, multiple rows of columns, 2 floors. So yeah, that could definitely house a lot of people. Not necessarily 3,000, but it could have been also area outside, right, immediately outside of the Royal Stoa. So yeah, technically, this option fits best. Well, I think that's a lot better than nothing, and it definitely looks a more legit place for this type of event of such a scale than the upper room, which is clearly just a room. But the bite and the room is not necessarily, well, it doesn't have to be, as I said, it doesn't have to be a room. It doesn't even have to be a house the way like we think of it. So in Hebrew, the word bite applies to so many things. Mm, Many things. It could be applied to an institute, could be applied to a building, could be applied to an area, mostly obviously covered area, many things. So yes, and the house is the temple, so Habayit. As we are now going around the Dome of the Rock, the small kind of a mini me of the of the Dome of the Rock. We spoke about it. This is I'm not going to repeat myself, but this is kind of it's called the Gate of Chain. Well, kind of the monument to chain, and exactly that area, the Dome of the Chain. Well, there is a Gate of the Chain. There's the Dome of the Chain. And if we go past it and we come closer to the edge, to the eastern edge of the Temple Mount platform, of the Dome of the Rock platform, actually exactly here is where we think the altar used to be. Not I believe. It's not like I conducted all those calculations. Obviously not. So again, well, exactly that area where I'm standing now with the burnt nose, and that's 8 in the morning, but so the walk was pretty tiring, but still interesting. So I am standing now in the red dot that's called like the temple court. I tried to I tried to cross like and film every bit of the Temple Mount. So this is exactly the area that's called like the Temple Court, and we are quite close to the place where the altar is believed to have been. And also, let's remember the Eastern Gate, right? The Eastern Gate is not really far, and if you go down that steps that I showed you, if you go down those steps that I showed you and you go further down straight ahead, you would soon find yourself next to that golden gate that we spoke about. And from here, again, have a look at this royal stoa. Look how massive this is. Right? So I think it fits. And as you can see, it wasn't just the walls of the old city that kind of separated the people right from the sacred area of the temple. The temple itself had the court. There were several courts. There were a lot of different sections designed for different visitors. There was even the section for the Gentiles. We will speak about it. And as I said, there were a lot of different illustrations, and they are quite accurate. So right now, where we are standing, somewhere there, we believe that's where the beautiful gate was, or the Nicanor gate. The beautiful gate, that's interesting. That's the name coming from the New Testament. And why is it called the beautiful gate? Because, well, we believe that the beautiful gate and the Nicanor gate is actually one and the same thing. Why were they called the beautiful gate? That's because the Nicanor gate had gold and gilded decorations, since the Nicanor gate was the first gate to one of the courts of the of the temple, so it had to be beautiful, obviously. So we believe that that's one of the same gate that is mentioned both as Nicanor gate in the Old Testament and the beautiful gate in the New Testament. So the Dome of the Rock itself, I will quickly just show you some photos and illustration. Well, because just the descriptions are definitely not enough. So let's see what we have. Some of these illustrations I've sourced from Wikipedia, actually. There are a lot of good illustrations. Well, the photos were taken in the 19th century. There were a lot of, well, with the influx of the pilgrims. Well, at that point, you were still, well, obviously they could allow the Temple Mount. They were allowed to visit uh, the Dome of the Rock. Obviously, it had to be arranged and coordinated, but it wasn't the way it looks nowadays. So there were photos taken, and this is exactly the bedrock that section of the Mount Moriah where the binding of Isaac, um, uh, according to the way it is described in Judaism, that's where the binding of Isaac happened. And you can see different indentations there. Those indentations are clearly artificial. I mean, this is not this cannot be weathering, this cannot be erosion. This must have been man-made, right? Because of the angles. And Lynn Mayer, again, one of the biggest minds, one of the, I would say, the biggest researchers of the Temple Mount, he believes that those indentations are related to the Holy of Holies and the location site, the site of the location of the Ark of the Covenant. Which is okay, could be the case, absolutely. And another, I like this illustration. It kind of shows you now what it looks within the, well, incorporated into the Dome of the Rock. So on the very top stood the Holy of Holies, inside which the Ark of the Covenant used to be. That's the idea. And the courts and the Nicanor gate would be to the left hand side of the Holy of Holies. That's basically how it is. And just also the colored photo for you to see. Well, this is, I would say, the most universally accepted situation that we have nowadays, since no studies can be carried out. That's the best we have, and this looks pretty much convincing to many scholars. So, and that's where the Holy of Holies was. If you look at the model of the Second Temple, that's where the Holy of Holies used to be, in that further section to closer to the Western Wall. And that's why in the Western Wall tunnels, the Western Wall is exactly where the Holy of Holies is. So that's the West. So that's the Western Wall. And if you go to the Western Wall tunnels, there are underground the big stones, and there was found also the gate, which is sealed, of course. It's all covered, and and that is believed to be the gate through which the Cohens entered. So the priest entered, which was the quickest way to access the temple, and that's why for Jews. The Western Wall is so important because this is the closest to the temple and the Holy of Holies. And especially if you go underground, you get even closer, even a little bit closer to it. Okay, I think this is enough for now. You must have been already fed up with me giving you all these details. What can I say? This is the Temple Mount. It's so nuanced. There are so many things to notice, so many things to keep in mind, and I try to be very economical with that. I try to be very mindful of the time, so I didn't go into too much of the recap, but I tried my hardest. And I also simplified some things. I didn't go into the nuances of the red heifer thing. I know there's a lot of things to talk about. It's probably one of the most mysterious rituals with regards to Judaism and the purification laws, but we're not into this topic nowadays. So I was very, I would say, brief about this. That's extremely impressive and interesting. Thank you so much, Dolly, to read this from someone from Israel. This is absolutely incredible. Thank you so much. I'm, I'm touched. Thank you so much, Dolly. Yes, and all this information is not something that only I have access to. This information is found in open sources. It's there. There are tons of books. There are tons of researches that were kept. Well, okay, not really tons, right? But there are also the international community of archaeologists and scientists that study the Temple Mount as much as they could. So it's not just a bunch of I don't know, Israelis or Jews that carry out all these research. It's way more than that. Obviously, it's way more than that. It's the big international community that has been doing the researches over the course of 170 years or so. You give helpful and detailed information, Anna, and never apologize for giving us details. Thank you so much, Ruth. Anna, thank you again for the incredible tour. Love the explanation. Thank you, Mary. Thank you so much, everyone. Oh my goodness, my cheeks are burning. How do you have to prove you're Muslim to enter the dome? They know. They just look at. Okay, if you look, let's say, like someone from the Middle East, technically speaking, you can get away with it. But if you look like a European, there are a lot of questions. They can ask you anything. They quote a surah from Quran. So you have to learn it by heart. But there are many other things they can check. And they have the eyes. They have the eyes. But again, you can get away with it if you look, I don't know, if you blend in. Technically, yeah, it is possible that who wants to take the risk? I don't. I know, and I could not possibly get away with it. I could not possibly sneak in. That's for sure, honestly. And my cheeks also would be burning. So no, definitely not. Thank you, Maria. Thank you. The nerdiness. Yeah, I hope that's the good kind of nerdiness. I love your diagrams and pictures. Oh, Marilyn, they are not mine. I don't have the patience. I don't have the time and the sources to do all that. I don't even know how they are made. Well, but you can find them in open access. You can find them. It becomes filled with the addition of your explanations. Oh, yes, I wouldn't have been able even to do this tour. I wouldn't even have started without these illustrations and all photographs. Oh no, absolutely, that's just absolutely impossible. And also that's why I sometimes need to go back to some of the illustrations or include the parts of the previous episodes because you just cannot keep this all in your head. Like, why would you do that? So what happens to you if you're caught? Well, the police will what the and the Israeli police will most probably fine you. They're not going to start the war because of that. However, there's not so much really takes, to start the war, unfortunately, in the Middle East when it gets to religion and violation of such important rules. So yeah, but you definitely will be fined. You definitely will be uh, taken to police, but I'm not sure which police exactly. But technically speaking, the yeah, a bow to Mr. Whitmer. Lynn Whitmer is incredible, absolutely. Like his book is well, okay, I don't mean to say that his book is just as important as the Testaments, but for guides, for historians, for archaeologists, it's one of those absolutely fundamental must-have books in the library, right at your like on your desk, in on your bedside table, and everywhere you go. That's basically what I want to say. So, with regards to what's going to happen to you if you get caught, I don't know to which police station you would be taken to, but it should be Israeli police because it is policed by Israel. Yes, and whenever something happens, it's Israeli police that's there. Yes, and even if you're basically violating these rules imposed by WAQF, which only deals with religious institutions and religious institutions, well, it should be Israeli police that will capture you, and you don't want that. No, nobody wants that. Why would you? Yeah, but also, well, obviously the work presence is there. They mainly make sure you're dressed properly, you don't expose too much of your body, and no kissing is allowed, no holding hands is allowed. I mean, for men and women, So you have to look modest, you have to behave yourself, and do not enter any site, any place, right? Don't go indoors. So that's the story. I hope I have answered your question. And there must be, well, yeah, some people must have sneaked in, must have, but you don't want to try. And I'm not, I'm not going to try. Okay, let me once again share with you the links. So the next episode, which is likely to be the last episode in this series of the Temple Mount tours, but Temple Mount is way more than just the Temple Mount, also the area around the Temple Mount. And I might also do one tour of the offfield because there have been made some absolutely amazing findings in the recent couple of years. And I don't really think I've ever mentioned, oh, well, I mean, I must have mentioned some of them. Yeah, I have, but there is more that I would like to share. And I have a little bit more of the, photographs that are published, more researchers are finally published because, with Israel, it takes, sometimes it takes years for a discovery to be properly described and published in the respective and respected um, resources and journals. So, yeah, thank you, Cindy. Whew, this marathon of 8 tours. Yeah, it's over until the next one, actually until Tuesday. So as you see, the last tour of the year is going to be the concert. No nerdy stuff, no only fun songs and weird Russian salads. Again, no politics involved, no geopolitics involved. Yes, it's going to be me, a Russian wife of a Russian Jew, uh, displaced Russian Israelis in Georgia, trying to embrace everything that we have and to be grateful to Georgia and to be grateful to all of you. And so you all are part of our family anyway. So we need to celebrate it with you. And that's it. So yeah, and show you this weird Russian salad. Some of them we have cooked before, some of them we haven't. And it's good for you that we are not going to cook them, but we're just going to show them to you. Yeah. And maybe even Grisha will, my son will, well, our son will do something. We'll see how it goes. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. You have all the links now. Yes, yes, exactly. Happy, well, happy last days of 2025. And oh, I don't know what 2026 is going to look like, but I don't have a lot of hopes. I just want to pull through. I just want to, to go with the flow and see where it takes me to. But with regards to my tours, some January tours are already there, and I'm planning to travel also in January to the Holy Land. Let's see how it goes. And that's where more tours and more filming will be done for you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your support. Thank you, Dolly. Thank you so much for remembering about my mom. Yes, definitely. And my mom also has her birthday in January. So January is, yeah, it's December, January is the time when I really want to be back home. But yeah, thank you, Marilyn. Okay, that's clearly time to wrap this up. Thank you for everything. And if you're interested in the recordings of the previous shows that I have done, there is a way to access more than 800 videos is the membership option. The links are all provided. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for all the time that you spend with me every weekend. And thank you for your support. Thank you for everything. I'll see you on Tuesday with my boys. Bye bye. Yeah, we just need to get through 2026. This already will be a good enough achievement.